In 1931, a mysterious article sent shockwaves through Hollywood. It didn't expose a scandal or leak a forbidden affair. It did something much more dangerous. It ranked the bodies of the most powerful women in the film industry. One by one, movie stars were publicly judged, not for their talent, not for their fame, but for their waistline, hip curve, and how well they fit the frame. It was bold, it was brutal, and it told the world who had the best figure in all of Hollywood. But here's the twist. The woman who claimed the top spot, she wasn't the biggest star. She wasn't the most glamorous. In fact, her name shocked even the studio bosses. And what followed was a quiet storm of jealousy, sabotage, and beauty standards that still haunt the industry to this day. It started with just a few lines in a magazine, a list tucked between studio gossip and ads for cold cream. But the headline was impossible to ignore. Hollywood's best figure, experts named the star with the perfect form. The year was 1931. Hollywood was booming. The Great Depression was tightening its grip, and the public craved escapism. So when this article surfaced, claiming to rank the perfect bodies of silver screen actresses, it wasn't just entertainment. It was a cultural event. Fashion designers, photographers, even studio executives allegedly weighed in. The piece claimed to be scientific, measurements, posture, symmetry, but behind the polite wording was a not-so-subtle message. You were either perfect or replaceable. And for actresses, that wasn't just flattery, it was pressure. One line in the wrong column could cost you a role, a contract, even your career. But when the rankings were finally revealed, it wasn't just who was on the list that caused drama. It was who wasn't.
The first celebrity we see is Bessie Love. Then Sally O'Neill. Edward G. Robinson, the famous character actor. Carl Laemmle Sr. And none other than Gloria Swanson. At this premiere, there are no passes to be had, and everybody attending must pay the price of $5 per ticket. Everybody who is anybody is here, and the gorgeous display of clothes is enough in itself to warrant attendance.
The number one star. No one expected her. Topping the list wasn't Greta Garbo. It wasn't Joan Crawford, Clara Bow, or even the era's platinum blonde bombshell Jean Harlow. It was Dolores del Rio, a woman who, to much of white America at the time, was still considered an outsider. Born in Durango, Mexico, Dolores wasn't just beautiful, she was hypnotic. Critics described her face as symmetrical perfection. Her waistline was quoted in newspapers. Designers obsessed over her neckline and posture. But there was something different about her. A quiet, commanding elegance that didn't scream for attention. It demanded it. The article named her Hollywood's best figure, using phrases like exquisite silhouette and ideal proportions. And unlike others on the list, Dolores wasn't defined by curves or cleavage. Her beauty was described as sculpted, precise, and timeless. Still, this choice rattled the industry. In 1931, Hollywood was still dominated by American-born starlets with studio-engineered personas. Dolores didn't fit that mold. She had an accent. She carried herself like royalty. And worst of all, for the other actresses, she wasn't chasing headlines. She was simply winning them. Rumors spread fast. Some said her studio, RKO Pictures, had paid for her placement. Others hinted that she had seduced a powerful columnist. But there was no proof. Just speculation, jealousy, and the uncomfortable realization that a woman outside the typical Hollywood mold had just redefined what it meant to be ideal. Even behind closed doors, actresses were furious. "She's not even that famous," one anonymous quote read in a gossip column weeks later. Another claimed, "You wouldn't even notice her on the street." But that was the thing. Dolores del Rio didn't need to be loud to be seen. And now that she was crowned number one, she wasn't just a rising star. She was a threat. And for the actresses left off the list entirely, that threat felt personal. The silent backlash. Who was left off? If Dolores del Rio's surprise victory stunned the public, the omissions caused a quiet uproar. Greta Garbo, with her haunting beauty and mystique, had been the face of high fashion and aloof elegance for years. Clara Bow, the red-headed rebel who practically invented Hollywood sex appeal, didn't even get a mention. And Joan Crawford, the woman MGM molded into a poster child of perfection, trained in dance, molded by ambition, and famous for her athletic frame, completely left out. For fans, the list felt incomplete. For insiders, it felt personal. People began to ask, how could a ranking of Hollywood's best bodies exclude the women who shaped the very idea of glamour? Behind the scenes, the snubs weren't seen as oversight, they were seen as strategy. In 1931, image wasn't just about talent or popularity, it was about power. Who had it, who was losing it, and who threatened it. Joan Crawford, by this time, was rumored to be difficult. She pushed back on studio decisions, challenged directors, and allegedly clashed with producers. Clara Bow had been dragged through the mud in the tabloids for her private life. Her star was beginning to dim. And Garbo? She was famously private, refusing interviews and skipping press events. Some say she didn't play the Hollywood game, so the game left her out. What the public didn't know is that gossip columnists weren't just observers. They were tools used by studios to boost or bury a star's career. And in an industry obsessed with control, this kind of list wasn't just fluff. It was leverage. One studio insider reportedly said, open quote, "You're not beautiful in Hollywood until someone powerful says you are." Close quote. Even the actresses themselves knew the stakes. Public image was everything, and one glowing sentence in the right column could mean another leading role. One omission? That could signal to casting directors that your time was up. And as the article circulated through studio lots and dressing rooms, it wasn't the praise that got people talking, it was the silence. The names that weren't there, the faces erased from what was supposed to be a celebration. One anonymous actress was quoted as saying, open quote, "It's not who made the list that matters, it's who got made invisible." Close quote. And in the middle of that quiet storm, one inclusion on the list seemed to both confuse and provoke everyone. A name known for curves, controversy, and a kind of beauty Hollywood couldn't quite figure out. Jean Harlow's curve conundrum. She wasn't just a star, she was a sensation. Jean Harlow, with her platinum blonde curls and figure-hugging gowns, wasn't made for subtlety. She exploded onto the screen with a kind of raw energy that didn't ask for attention. It demanded it. In 1931, her name was rising fast, and so was the controversy. So when the article ranked her among Hollywood's best figures, people didn't know whether to cheer or roll their eyes. Because Jean Harlow didn't represent traditional beauty. She represented something far more dangerous, sexual power. Critics were divided. Some praised her curves and magnetism. Others called her vulgar, gaudy, even tacky. One columnist sniped that Harlow had the kind of body that sells popcorn, not tickets. But that was the problem. She sold both. Her inclusion on the list felt like a direct challenge to the industry's unspoken rules. Up until then, the perfect figure meant restraint, slim waists, long necks, soft lines, and modest grace. Harlow brought none of that. She brought hips, cleavage, and a stare that could melt camera film. Studios were split. Some insiders believed her name was added to the list purely for publicity, to stir conversation, rile up more conservative fans, and remind the public that sex still sold. Others claimed MGM had encouraged the publication to include her, hoping to polish her image and elevate her status beyond tabloid fodder. Behind the scenes, it was rumored Harlow herself was conflicted. She played the vixen on screen, but in private she was deeply insecure, often pressured to maintain her image through intense diets, skin bleaching routines, and grueling studio schedules. She reportedly hated her hair treatments, which required frequent peroxide and ammonia sessions that left her scalp damaged. Yet, it was the look that made her famous. Being on the list may have felt like a victory, but it also boxed her in. The industry now expected her to stay the bombshell, the siren, the object of desire, with no room for reinvention. And among her peers, her presence on the list sparked something worse than jealousy: disdain. To actresses who had trained for years, who mastered Shakespeare or endured ballet boot camps, Jean Harlow represented a shortcut, someone who skipped the refinement and walked straight into fame with nothing but hips and lipstick. But Jean knew exactly what she was doing. She once famously said, open quote, "Men like me because I don't wear a girdle. Women like me because I don't look like their husband's secretaries." Close quote. She wasn't trying to fit in. She was trying to break through. And she did. But even as the public swooned and the box office roared, one truth remained. Hollywood would never be fully comfortable with Jean Harlow. Not because of how she looked, but because of how she made them feel. And if Jean Harlow was too much, the next woman on the list was something Hollywood had never seen before and didn't quite know what to do with. Marlene Dietrich, the androgynous icon. She lit cigarettes with the same ease most actresses applied lipstick. She wore tuxedos to red carpets and turned heads not by showing skin, but by showing power. In 1931, when Marlene Dietrich was named as one of Hollywood's best figures, it wasn't just unexpected. It was revolutionary. At a time when women were measured by curves, corsets, and how well they stayed inside the lines, Dietrich didn't just color outside them. She burned the whole template. With her long limbs, angular face, and cool, calculated stare, Marlene didn't fit the pinup mold. She wasn't soft. She wasn't submissive. She was sculpted, sharp, and completely in control. The article that praised her figure used words like precise, refined, and striking. But notice what was missing. No mention of warmth. No talk of charm. She wasn't framed as desirable. She was described like an object in a museum. Admired, but untouchable. And yet everyone was watching her. In an era obsessed with femininity, Marlene wore masculinity like armor. She donned men's suits, tailored coats, and monocles. And when she did wear a gown, she wore it with a kind of weaponized grace. She knew what she was doing. She once said, open quote, "Glamour is what I sell. It's my stock in trade." Close quote. And yet, her glamour was never about pleasing men. It was about control. Controlling how she was seen, how she was lit, how she was remembered. That made her dangerous. To studio heads, she was difficult. To gossip columnists, she was unknowable. To other actresses, she was something they both admired and resented. A woman who didn't ask permission to be different and still made it to the top. But there were costs. Behind the tailored suits and smoldering glances was a carefully curated illusion. Dietrich's weight was obsessively monitored. She reportedly had furniture in her home modified to protect her posture. She wore custom-made corsets and lighting gels to keep her appearance consistent on screen. She once had a director fired because he didn't light her correctly. Not out of vanity, but because she knew how brutal Hollywood could be when a woman aged, changed, or showed even a hint of vulnerability. And then there were the rumors about her private life, her lovers, even her identity. Marlene neither confirmed nor denied most of it. She thrived in mystery because mystery gave her power. Her inclusion on the best figure list wasn't just about her body. It was about what her body represented: defiance, control, and the rejection of the traditional female gaze. Still, the irony wasn't lost on her fans or her critics. Here was a woman who spent her career deconstructing beauty standards, being praised in a list that reinforced them. That tension made Marlene Dietrich one of Hollywood's most complex figures, not just for how she looked, but for what she meant. She wasn't just a name on the list. She was a symbol that the old rules were beginning to crack. And in their place, a new kind of woman was emerging. Unapologetic, unconventional, and unwilling to play the game by anyone else's rules. But for every woman who pushed back, there were dozens forced to submit, in silence, to the unrelenting pressure of Hollywood's impossible expectations. The pressure of perfection. To a casual reader in 1931, the article was light entertainment, a whimsical list ranking the most beautiful bodies in Hollywood. But for the women it named, and the many it didn't, it was a weapon. Because in the golden age of Hollywood, beauty wasn't just part of the job, it was the job. And perfection? That was a full-time contract. The standards weren't just high, they were brutal. Studios had entire departments dedicated to controlling the physical appearance of their stars. Weight was tracked like box office numbers. Hips, bust, and waistlines were measured regularly. One actress gained 3 pounds and allegedly received a telegram from her studio that simply read, "Fix it." Corsets weren't just for red carpets. They were required for everyday filming. Some actresses even had ribs removed to achieve the hourglass look demanded by studio executives. Breast binders, butt pads, nose molds, and extreme dental procedures were common and almost never talked about. Diet pills were handed out like candy. Many of them were packed with amphetamines. Sleep was a luxury. Most stars worked 14-hour days, only to be pushed into evening press appearances. And if they cracked under the pressure, they were labeled unstable and replaced. Makeup artists were told to conceal not just blemishes, but exhaustion, covering the bruises left by corsets, the weight loss caused by starvation, the bags under the eyes from chronic insomnia. Publicists manufactured stories of natural beauty and effortless charm, while behind the scenes, actresses were vomiting between takes, collapsing in dressing rooms, or crying through fittings. The list, that seemingly innocent ranking of best figures, wasn't just a spotlight. It was a line drawn in the sand. On one side, the women still considered marketable. On the other, those who had become liabilities, and everyone knew it. Actresses who didn't make the cut faced quiet consequences. Fewer auditions, smaller roles, less press. Their names would quietly stop appearing in columns, their invitations to premieres would dry up, and eventually, the calls would stop. That's why the list mattered. It wasn't about flattery. It was about control. A constant reminder that in Hollywood, you were always being watched, always being evaluated. And one misstep, one wrinkle, one meal, one unflattering photo could end your career. This pressure didn't come from fans. It came from the machine, studios, publicists, magazines, photographers, agents. A system that built women up only to tear them down the moment they aged, spoke up, or gained 5 pounds. Even women who did make the list weren't safe. Dolores del Río, despite being ranked number 1, reportedly lived in constant fear of aging out of her own myth. Jean Harlow was prescribed dangerous crash diets to maintain her bombshell status. Marlene Dietrich famously traveled with her own lighting equipment, not for vanity, but survival. She knew one poorly lit photo could lead to whispers that she was losing her looks. And those whispers? They spread fast in Hollywood. This wasn't about health. It wasn't even about sex appeal. It was about selling an illusion, and the price was always paid by the woman being sold. Some stars faded quietly. Some rebelled and were blacklisted. Others bent the system just enough to survive. But no one escaped it entirely. Because in 1931, the question wasn't, are you talented? It was, can you stay beautiful enough, long enough to matter? And though the headlines have changed, the mirror hasn't. How this list would be received today. If a magazine published that same list today, ranking women by their bodies, naming names, and assigning value based on waistlines, it would be torn apart within hours. The headlines would scream, body shaming, sexist, outdated. Social media would erupt. Hashtags would trend. Celebrities would issue statements. Brands would distance themselves overnight, and rightfully so. We like to believe we've evolved, that we've moved past those kinds of rankings, that we celebrate all body types now, all forms of beauty. But have we really? Because if you look closely, the list never went away. It just changed platforms. Today it lives in hot or not clickbait, red carpet breakdowns, and influencer comparison posts. It hides behind who wore it better polls and paparazzi beach photos zoomed in on stretch marks. It exists in the unspoken rules of Instagram, angles, filters, trends, and the silent understanding that some bodies are still treated as more valuable than others. Back in 1931, the rankings were printed in ink. Now, they're updated in real time, every time someone scrolls, likes, swipes, or judges. We're still keeping score. We've just gotten faster at it. And the pressure? It hasn't disappeared. Actresses still face ruthless beauty standards. Influencers build entire careers off a perfect body, only to be canceled the moment they change. Plastic surgery is now marketed as wellness, and filters can now reshape a face in seconds. The difference? Today's stars are expected to maintain the illusion and pretend it's effortless. Back then, at least the pressure was acknowledged. Now, it's denied, hidden behind hashtags about authenticity and empowerment. But the core idea that a woman's body is public property, something to be ranked, praised, or picked apart, still lingers. And that's what makes the 1931 list so haunting. It wasn't just a product of its time. It was a preview of what was to come. Because even when the spotlight moves, the shadows it leaves behind don't disappear. A mirror to the machine. What seemed like a playful list in 1931 a harmless ranking of Hollywood's best figures, was never just about beauty. It was about control. It was a mirror held up to a system that treated women like products, measured, molded, and marketed to fit a fleeting ideal. And the women who didn't fit that mold? They were ignored, erased, or quietly replaced. Dolores del Río, Jean Harlow, Marlene Dietrich, each of them navigated that machine in different ways. Some bent the rules, some broke them. All of them paid a price for existing under a spotlight that demanded perfection and punished anything else. But the real story isn't just about who made the list. It's about why the list existed at all. Because in every era, Hollywood has found new ways to rank, judge, and shape the women it profits from, whether in gossip columns, filtered timelines, or online hot takes. And while the fashion may change, the message too often stays the same. You are only as valuable as the body you inhabit and how well it performs for the world. So maybe the real question isn't who had the best figure in 1931. Maybe it's this: why were we ever asking that in the first place?